If you own picks for this 2025 Dynasty rookie draft season, you're going to want to watch this video because a lot of people have been questioning this class and the depth of it and the star power of it and saying this is a weak class. I'm just going to punt to 2026 or, hey, I'm just going to buy 2027 picks. Okay, well, hold on. Let's pump the brakes. We're going to talk about some players here. I think these analytics, again, there really are two ways that you can go through and analyze a player, right? Or evaluate a player. The analytical side of it, right? And so the stats, the metrics, the numbers, and this is, you know, where we tend to lean a little bit more towards because it's more objective, right? And then there's the film, the subjective things, what you see with your eyes, what your scouting ability, what it tells you, right? And so typically what creators do and what you should do is you combine those things and you have a pretty good look at your overall opinion of a player. Now, again, I said it once, I'll say it again. We tend to lean towards analytics here. Why? Analytics are objective. Numbers, you know, numbers don't always tell the whole story, but you can't fudge numbers, right? You can make them look a certain way to support or not support your argument, but numbers are numbers. They're, and let me just tell you, the bakery. A lot of people have asked, hey, what's the bakery? The bakery is an analytical model that was created using various mathematical techniques like linear regression and things like that, which takes a number of factors, all based on, you know, all factors that we've found, or by we, I mean Ryan Bread, has found to be indicative of how a wide receiver will translate from college to the NFL. It's a model that encompasses all of this: production, efficiency, size, speed, draft capital, everything. Puts it into numbers and then gives you an ultimate result on, you know, how we should be valuing certain prospects and classes for wide receiver, running back, and tight end.
There's no film grade involved.
No film grade in this. So again, numbers. This is completely objective, right? So let's get that out of the way. That's what the bakery is. I'll tell you how to get access to the bakery here in a second. But when I'm looking at the bakery for wide receivers, which, by the way, for the bakery, the wide receiver, and just full screenshot of the bakery, please. It's an impressive thing. He has spent a ton of time on this. It is accurate. Let me tell you it's accurate. When I was looking at the bakery, this stood out to me. I was looking at the wide receiver one, which in my opinion is the best one. Ryan would tell you the wide receiver one's probably the best one. Wide receivers, you can nail down a little bit more of a science than you can with running backs. And I'm looking at this year. First of all, there's this narrative out there in Dynasty that if you have the 102, congrats, you suck. Congrats, this year, you don't get a good player there. Congrats, you should probably try to down tier. That's the narrative right now. And don't do that right now. What else is Dynasty Domain here for if it's not to push back and go against the grain and tell you that everybody's full of crap? And maybe they're not full of crap. Maybe they just don't have a bakery in front of them. But I've got the bakery, and when I'm looking at the bakery, here's what I see. I'm looking at the overall. So this is from 2017 until now, the overall rankings for wide receivers in the bakery. And what catches my eye is about 10 rows down. That's 10 rows out of scrolling, 506 wide receivers in this database. 10 rows down. I see a name there. Tet McMillan. And you might say, okay, that's not really significant, right? Because Marvin Harrison Jr., he was, you know, first last year. He hasn't hit yet. Sure. Like, you know, Marvin Harrison Jr. was the best prospect ever in the bakery. But let me read you the top 10 prospects in the bakery. In this first tier, it was Marvin Harrison Jr., Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors, Justin Jefferson, and CeeDee Lamb. 80% hit rate. It'll be 100 when Marv hits, okay? But listen to this blue tier. Again, it sorts them in tiers based on, pretty much automatically based on how close they are and the gaps between, you know, their wide receiver scores generated by the bakery. Here's the blue tier. JSN, Drake London, DJ Moore, AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Tet McMillan. Now, you could go as far as saying, okay, I technically don't think that Chris Olave has hit yet. But I don't think you could make that argument for literally anybody else in this list. And in fact, Chris Olave had what? I mean, almost a wide receiver one season, right? At one point. I mean, even though Chris Olave's had a lot of injuries, when you look at when he's been healthy, he's a wide receiver 16. So he was a mid wide receiver 2. Everybody else in there has been a wide receiver 1, right? Jason was a wide receiver 1 this year. And when you're talking about a guy who has a wide receiver 1 finish as, you know, somebody who's young in Dynasty, they tend to be pretty valuable. They tend to get a pretty big value spike, right? I mean, Chris Olave, do remember, was going at the 2-3 turn just 2 years ago, right? Okay, so he did get that value after he had that good season. Tet McMillan's ranked above Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. He's obviously in the middle of this tier. But when I'm looking at the hit rate for guys in this blue tier analytically, the hit rate is as close to 100% as I think you can get without knowing, you know, into the future what these guys are going to look like. Now, when you're talking about what the bakery's actually taking into account here, first round draft capital, the size, speed combination is obviously great, but there are a lot of metrics. Dominator rating, which is all production based, 10 out of 10 for Tet McMillan. The breakout age is fine. The efficiency is average. But again, that's being factored into his, again, top 10 all-time score right now. Height adjusted size speed, 10 out of 10. The draft capital, obviously great. And so Ted McMillan, from an analytical standpoint, so the film is fine. I think if anybody who's watched this film would say it was fine. But from an analytical standpoint, what I'm seeing is I am absolutely willing to plant my flag on Ted McMillan, because when I'm looking at the rest of the guys in the bakery around him, in the same tier as him, all of them have hit. Every single one of them at a high level. And so what I can confidently say based on, again, this bakery, which is very, very accurate, is that Ted McMillan would be an outlier if he did not hit. And because of the level that these guys are hitting at when they do hit, Ted McMillan at the 1 and 2 doesn't sound all that bad to me.
No, not at all. Absolutely not at all. And even if you're like a Tet downer and you're like, oh man, I disagree with you. I think you're wrong. I think when it's all said and done, he might get worse draft capital than we expect. He might get a worse landing spot than we expect. He might not, look super good his first year, which again, we're not really worried about that this offseason. We're worried about his value. But if you're really that worried about the wide receiver class this year, look no further than the running back 2 in this class. And when you're looking at the running back 2 in this class, at least analytically, according to the bakery, it is Caleb Johnson.
Whoa.
Who, yes, folks, with day 2 draft capital is still in the same tier, almost directly behind Ashton Jency.
Which we're not that bold. This is where, common sense comes into play.
This is where common sense obviously comes in, but common sense is saying that Caleb Johnson is not on the same level as Ashton Jency when it comes to like a prospect perspective at the NFL level, where Jency's probably going to go top 15 and Caleb Johnson will probably go in like the Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker range where they were drafted in their respective classes. Now, all that to say, when you're looking at the overall ranks here, again, this is just talking about Caleb Johnson, not Travion Henderson, not Omar Hampton, not some of the guys that everyone is obsessed with in this class, like Quinshon Judkins, Ollie Gordon, Jordan James, Devin Neal, et cetera, who all are in a very, very solid high hit rates here as well. Caleb Johnson is the 4th highest graded running back ever in the bakery. This is dating back all the way to 2017. Bijan Robinson, obviously in a tier of his own. Then you have Jency, who's the 2nd highest graded, pending first-round draft capital, even over Saquon Barkley. Then you have Saquon Barkley, and then you have Caleb Johnson right underneath that. Look at this blue tier. Caleb Johnson in this tier of all these guys, JT, Travis Etienne, and Jahmyr Gibbs. You'll say, well, Travis Etienne, Caleb Johnson's going to be the next Travis Etienne. I'm fine with that because Travis Etienne maintained his value for 3 straight years.
He was the running back 3 in 2023.
Yeah.
It's a hit.
Yes, it's a value hit. And again,
Correct.
We're talking about what is the value of these picks going to do in the early offseason heading into the NFL draft in April when the draft's all said and done. 102, 103, you've got Ted McMillan and you've got the running back 2 in that tier. And Caleb Johnson is, again, pending day 2 draft capital, is probably going to be that second guy with a good landing spot as well. I don't think like the production we've talked about in the past, the film we talked about plenty of times. We've done film breakdowns, done our running back rankings and everything for you before. But with Caleb Johnson, I think that he's a very well-rounded skill set type of guy. He's not going to burn you in the open field, but he's a guy who can take a bell cow workload, take it on at the NFL level, and if he goes to a landing spot like the Chargers, which everyone's dreaming of, like 6 other landing spots I could think of off the top of my head.
Broncos.
Right. Legit, like Caleb Johnson, guys, get ready for it. He is going to be ranked much higher than you probably would initially expect. Not just because of the bakery, though. That's a good indicator for us that he's probably going to be in that 2nd tier of running backs right below Ashton Jency this season.
And again, I think the class is stronger than what we're giving credit for. We'll keep going through this and give you some more guys, some more examples. If you want the full access to the bakery, so you can go through, look at the overall rankings, the historical rankings, look at some guys who are similar, so some comparable guys. Go through and look at the bakery every single year, test it out for yourself, and look at the guys for this year to make your own decisions. You can get full access to the bakery at flockfantasy.com/domain. Code domain, annual Motherflocker tier is going to get you a free team blueprint. We'll give you a personalized team review, give you your positional grades, your team archetype, your 3-year outlook, and then give you some moves to make and more based on that. But you're also going to get, again, the 2025 rookie draft guide, which has all of this in it, a lot of these numbers in it, and the full bakery. You can go do this yourself. This bakery is a great tool to have for this 2025 draft season. So I would recommend checking it out. But you also get the Discord. The Discord's popping right now. You got the trades forum. It's a great tool. Flockfantasy.com/domain. Like I said, code domain, annual Motherflocker tier. We'll get that done for you. This next guy, now again, I'm going to say it again because I know we're going to get this. Numbers do sometimes lie. And this doesn't mean, like Nathan said, Caleb Johnson, Ashton Jeanty, mathematically they're in the same tier. They're clearly not. They're clearly not from a prospect standpoint. You'd be crazy to. And so there has to be some sort of reality, and some of that reality is baked into film grades and stuff like that comes into this. And so this isn't gospel. But again, with the first two guys, we're willing to take our shot given the analytics and given the hit rates of the guys that are going around them. Now, this next one's a little bit more interesting because the hit rate's not near as high here, right? This is much more of a shot in the dark.
It's a very
but
guided
it's not
shot
bad.
in the dark.
And it's another running back.
Good.
And I will say this about the running back version of the bakery. And Ryan would tell you this as well. It's less of an exact science. Running backs are they are a lot harder to actually nail down. And so looking at guys in this tier, this yellow tier is pretty big here because you've got guys that hit, like Devon Achane.
There are a ton
like
of
Kareem
good
Hunt.
names here.
You've got, Cam Akers was technically a hit. Alvin Kamara is down here. DeAndre Swift was a value hit, right? And going through here, David Montgomery, James Conner, Ramondre Stevenson. A lot of these guys hit from big time, and most of them actually
okay,
did.
so we have try it this way too. We've got 37 backs in this tier. Try to pick out the guys who were never at any point after they got their rookie draft capital were significantly valued after that.
Well, I can count Darrell Henderson,
Sony Michel, Darius Geis,
yep, Spiller,
Keyshawn Vaughn. So that's 4 guys. Lloyd is
Kendre
to be determined.
Still, probably TBD. Jalen Wright TBD. It's
so 6 or 7 guys.
It's a pretty high relative hit rate, right?
Yeah, that's pretty dang good.
So again, we talk about, this class sucks. I should just pivot. How many guys are in this yellow tier here?
The yellow tier and above, we have 11 running backs.
11.
And with this yellow tier here, we're being very conservative with the draft capital. A lot of these guys are in this tier with day 3 draft capital.
And again, of the 11, 7 of them are here in this yellow tier, and we are being conservative. This right now, which should surprise nobody, this stacks up to be the best running back class since probably 2017.
Yeah.
And so looking at that, one of the, in my opinion, probably the highest floor guy, of the non-elite guys, of the non-top 4 or 5 guys. The highest floor guy, in my opinion, out of those guys, Cam Scadaboo range, DJ Gidden range, Ollie Gordon, Jordan James, it's Devin Neal, actually.
Neal.
So because, analytically, I'll give you the breakdown. This is one where I've watched him play, and I've watched his film, and he's just okay, personally, this guy stands out to me. I really like Devin Neal. I'm very, very high on him, right? But analytically, it really supports my argument.
Yeah, and in complete honesty, this guy is someone who we both admit is not. He doesn't have elite traits. He's just kind of
all around good
at everything, which is not necessarily a bad thing when you're talking about his respective price. We're gonna get to the NFL draft, and there are gonna be running backs that are currently ranked below him in the bakery that are gonna jump him because of draft capital. It's gonna happen. Ollie Gordon has a good shot at it. Jordan James does. Dylan Sampson does. DJ Giddens does. All those guys right now are ranked below Devin Neal in the bakery. Good chance that they're gonna jump him. There's a good chance that a number of guys above Devin Neal right now could fall. If they don't get the draft capital that we expect. Neal is just the only guy that's so steady because it doesn't matter where you put his draft capital, his ranking remains the same.
And that's exactly where I was going. Right now, the running back 6 with 4th round draft capital. That's probably the most likely scenario. If you're to give this guy 2nd round draft capital, the running back 5, he barely even moves up. 5th round draft capital, he moves down in the same tier, running back 9. I don't think I think he goes in the 4th. I think he's that good.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about the analytical floor of this guy, 21.7 years old, but the most recent news with Devin Neal is he did play at the Senior Bowl. 220 pounds for Devin Neal. I like that a lot. I really do like that. And again,
and why is this the case? I think this is important to highlight. With the reason this is the case with Devin Neal is because the bakery is very friendly to players that break out earlier than what's normal and are consistent in their college career throughout their college career. Devin Neal is the definition of consistency.
Absolutely.
We thought that he was going to come out last year. We were going to have him ranked higher than consensus then. He ended up going back, had another 1,000+ yard season, 3rd straight.
Yeah.
He does the exact same thing every single year.
And so when you're looking at his advanced analytics here, the dominator rating is a 7. The receiving dominator is a 9. That should be a good sign alone. The breakout, like Nathan mentioned, is a 10. The speed, is really good. We project him to be good. We'll see what he does at the combine. But we have him down for a 4.5. That's being conservative, but I think that's about where he runs. I hope he doesn't run lower. I hope he doesn't run a 4.55.
Yep.
Again, really his biggest knock was the efficiency. Kansas was really up and down, and so some of that could have been situationally based. Some of it could be Devin Neal, right? And not a huge breakaway run guy, not a huge make guys miss guy. So the point is, Devin Neal, again, a very high floor guy. This could be the guy you're getting in the second round. So a lot of people are like, okay, the second round. Hey, the second round's elite this year. I wouldn't say the second round's elite. But I will say the running backs in the second round are going to be pretty darn good this year. And while last year it was wide receivers you were getting in the second round, you felt good about. This year I think it could be running backs. Devin Neal's one of those guys. Devin Neal is how you'd say a my guy, although analytically, again, it doesn't really matter if he's mine or somebody else's analytically. His analytics are pretty good. And so we really like Devin Neal. This wide receiver is interesting as well. This is a wild card, the wild card of wild cards.
He is quite literally the definition of wild cards. This guy has pretty much a buffer of like 3 different tiers where he could end up being when it's all said and done, pending draft capital. Trey Harris is a guy that we're talking about right now. We have him projected 3rd round draft capital, very, very conservative. Again, we're gonna always favor the conservative side of draft capital projection than be like the PFF mocks that come out that have the first 20 players going in the first round, all offensive fantasy guys. Like Trey Harris, good chance that he probably goes day 2. There are whispers of Trey Harris going first, and it's more than just whispers. It's like legitimate talk about Trey Harris going late first. You obviously saw the type of wide receivers that went in the late first, early second last year, and it does make you believe that it's very possible that this could happen for Trey Harris and getting some solid draft capital. You obviously in 2024 had guys like Ricky Pearsall, Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, who else? Xavier Legette going in that range as well. I mean, all these guys are in the tier below Trey Harris currently, and they all, in a very strong wide receiver class, were still being pushed up boards going very, very high. Trey Harris as a prospect, like when it comes to our film analysis and what we think about him, kind of a wild card there too. Like we don't really have an opinion one way or the other. He could be a career deep threat that's like a big body contested catch guy. He could be someone who's like,
he could be QJ,
kind of legit. And
like honestly,
he could be QJ. He could be DK. We don't really know. But again, we're gonna let the draft capital talk here, and let's just play the game here, because when you're looking at what happens to him if he gets 2nd round draft capital, he's gonna stay in the tier. Nothing big happens there. Day 2, he's gonna be in the same tier as Igbuka, Travis Hunter, and Isaiah Bond, which again, solid tier this year. Igbuka being consistently mocked in the mid first. Travis Hunter, obviously a wild card in his own right from a fantasy production perspective. We don't know how much he's going to play wide receiver. It's the only reason he's in this tier to begin with. It really is kind of like Igbuka, Trey Harris, and then Isaiah Bond. You give him 1st round draft capital. If he goes in the late 1st round, he's in the same tier as Luther Burden. You give him 5th round draft capital. He only drops down a tier and is in the same tier as Jalen Royals, and Alec.
And so the one thing about that is that next tier, the hit rate is significantly
lower.
And so he's
also,
a wild card.
Right.
He's just a wild card. And again, Trey Harris probably not going to get 1st round draft capital. So but again, it's just worth noting that 3rd round draft capital has him in that tier. And you say, okay, Isaiah Bond's clearly not in that tier.
Yeah. I mean, the tier that he's in, again, a lot more hit or miss here, but you've got guys like Zay Flowers, Chris Godwin,
Pittman, Jaden Reed
as well. Yeah. So there, I mean, Rashee Rice also at the very bottom of this tier. You've got other guys too, like Paris Campbell, who never turned out, Kadarius Toney, who never turned out, N'Keal Harry, Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, list goes on, but honestly, a number of those guys I mentioned had significant amounts of value well after their rookie year anyways.
Right.
So, not that bad, but still keep Trey Harris in mind and follow his draft capital closely, because that will more than probably any other wide receiver in this class this year heavily impact the way that we rank him post NFL draft.
Okay. So I want to talk about a couple of guys here on the flip side of this, that the bakery does not like them. And just because the bakery does not like them doesn't mean that they're not going to be good. I just want to emphasize that, right?
Correct. One of the most hated running backs in this year's class, even though he's, gotten a lot of buzz and a lot of talk because of his production at SMU this year, is Brashard Smith. Brashard Smith is the 5th lowest ranked running back in the bakery of 31 this year. He's 22 years old. Again, he was in college for a bit there, like 4 years. He transferred. The biggest reason of the breakout here, the guy didn't do jack for 3 straight years. He had to transfer out of Miami to then go to SMU. Honestly, credit to him for, sticking with it for 3 straight seasons, waiting for that opportunity that he never got at the U. That could be part of it. Honestly, that could be part of it. Is he just never got his opportunity at Miami, and then he puts up 1,300 yards on 230 carries, just under 6 yards per reception or per carry. Jeez Louise, and 14 touchdowns, and then efficient in the receiving game as well. 14 receptions, 200 yards, 14.2 yards per reception, 2 touchdowns in the air. I mean, the guy was solid this year. And again, you're going to have film buffs out there that say Brashard Smith, he's don't sleep on Brashard Smith. Don't listen to, the people that say, oh, he broke out his 4th year. Guys, there is a reason that the Bakery ranks the breakout players who broke out their 4th year so low. It's the same reason guys like RJ Harvey in this year's class are ranked significantly low, because
there's a correlation.
There's a correlation. There's a correlation, and the hit rate is pretty much 0. It just is. And again, you can bet on the outlier all you want. We're not in the business of betting on outliers consistently, and that's why hit rates, a lot of times, that's why the hit rates on the Bakery, that's why a lot of takes that we'll have that are based on what the Bakery says,
hot takes, yeah,
are, better hit rates than 0, because we're not betting on guys who broke out their 4th year. It's kind of just as simple as that. Yeah. And again, this is all pending draft capital. If Brashard Smith goes day 2, we're gonna have to have a conversation. But there's a very good chance, more likely than not, that this guy's another day 3 running back. And I would rather take shots on other day 3 running backs than Brashard Smith.
Yeah, and again, I think Brashard Smith was really explosive this year. Obviously, very productive. Just saying. This one is interesting. Xavier Restrepo from Miami. A lot of people like him. Slot wide receiver. He's a smaller guy. Redshirt senior again. The breakout age a little bit less than average, but not terrible. Dominator was okay. Yards per route runs okay. Yak per route is okay. 40 is he projects to be pretty fast, right? Height adjusted size speed's okay because he's small.
I thought he's projected to have a pretty slow 40.
Yeah,
he's a slower guy.
Well, we have him in here, so this is being aggressive because we got him at 4.45 right now. I mean, even if I bump him up to a 4.41 in 2nd round draft capital, the highest he can get in the Bakery with those numbers is the wide receiver 16 this year, and people have him ranked as the top 6-7 wide receiver right now.
Yeah,
and so it's not happening often, but what the point is, his metrics from pretty much across the board are just not that good. It's not like he wasn't playing in an offense where he could have been dominant this year. He's playing Miami's offense, playing with Cam Ward, one of the better quarterbacks in the country this year. And the Dominator rating, it was better this year, 32.8%. But Restrepo's a guy where the analytics, again, the hit rate in this tier that he's in now are so low. It's incredible. Other guys in that tier, just by the way, Jalen Knoll, Torrey Horton, below them, you've got Matthew Golden, Jack Besh. Again, all these guys are big. They would be huge outliers from the Bakery. They'd be ginormous outliers if they hit. And then the last guy here.
Yeah, Woody Marks is someone that's going to be. He had a lot of noise in the early offseason, like before college football was even over, and it's kind of chilled out a little bit. I think partially because of the age, partially because of the lack of efficiency as a runner, partially because of the fact that people realize, hey, maybe this guy is, not necessarily a sure thing. And he is quite literally the definition of situationally dependent. If this guy goes day 3, which again is more likely than not where he's going to go day 3, to a situation where, they've got a really creative play caller who's going to utilize him consistently in the receiving game. What's the ceiling even at that point going to be? I mean, the dude is ranked so low in the Bakery, 22nd right now overall among running backs. You can call him an outlier if you want. Again, very similar to Brashard Smith, efficient as a receiver, not so efficient as a runner. 24 years old. If you want to bet on him, you can. But this is just not a guy that we're probably going to go all in for. Heading into the combine, heading into the draft, and things like that.
And so of the 39 running backs in the tier that he's currently ranked in the overall historical rankings, Woody Marks, literally the only guy in this tier that's hit. There's been legitimately one guy. Kyron Williams.
Yeah.
The only one.
Yeah.
That is seriously like the truth.
And what was that?
All these guys, you don't even know who they are.
That was situationally dependent. So
absolutely was. You got to go into McVay offense.
If Woody Marks goes day 3 and people are really disappointed with his draft capital and he goes to a curious landing spot like the Giants, or something, I'd be like, hey, maybe you want to take a late round shot on Woody Marks if the price is right in your rookie draft. But again, we're probably not going to go much further than that.
And so again, Analytics aren't everything, but they are important. Hopefully, you enjoy this video, a little bit more of an analytical deep dive, and we have to balance our film opinions with our analytical opinions to form our total opinions, why we're higher on Woody Marks than his rankings. So we have Rashard Smith even higher than his ranking. So we're not, propping the good guys up just because of analytics. We're not also bringing the bad guys down just because of analytics. It's a balance, but for you nerds like us, again, we're playing the odds here. The odds are pretty good or pretty bad in some of these situations. So make sure you drop a like, make sure you subscribe. Flockfantasy.com/domain. Use code domain and your Motherflocker to get yourself a free team blueprint. Get the full bakery and the rookie draft guide. Link is pinned in the comments. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you later.